Welcome to episode 6 of Metabolism Diet and Health with HuntBobo MD. The last time we learned that everything, including oxygen and water, have a therapeutic window. You need a certain amount to have the good effect, but more is not always better. You have to have a balance of all of the necessary ingredients for life. And this balance is the key. Too much of anything is bad. Not enough of certain things is also bad. In this episode, we're going to talk about methemoglobinemia and some of the problems that can happen from stuff in our food and our environment. A while back, after getting a good supply of venison and wild boar, I decided I was going to make some sausage. And I looked up the techniques and methods for making sausage and found out that you're supposed to add this prog salt, which is basically a sodium nitrate. I'm going to stop and switch this to where it's actually not mirror image. Where I can get, this is my right hand right here. And you can read this. This is, stop that screen there. Pink curing salt that you put into the sausages or salami, whatever it is you're making. And the primary reason to do that is to prevent Clostridium difficile or Clostridium perfringens from growing, one of the Clostridium species, but several other bacteria. And the total amount used is tiny. It's 1 teaspoon per 5 pounds. It's pink. The salt itself is pink inside here, so no one will confuse it with sodium chloride and poison themselves. The pink is that stuff in there. 1 teaspoon per 5 pounds of meat, or 4 ounces per 100 pounds of meat. And that'll help keep your lipids and your amino acids from oxidizing and keep it fresher looking and good. But most of us have heard about the bad effects of having nitrates in preserved foods. That's why I always say try to get away from processed and preserved foods as much as possible. I don't think that we have the final answer about it being carcinogenic or non-carcinogenic. But it definitely can cause methemoglobinemia, where the iron in the hemoglobin is reduced from the Fe+2 state to the Fe+3 state, from ferrous to ferric iron. The ferric iron really can't bind oxygen, but it causes a deformation of the other 3 polypeptides in the 4 polypeptide molecule of hemoglobin. It's got 4 subunits, 2 alpha and 2 beta, and they deform, and the binding capacity shifts to the left to where it can't release the oxygen. So even the heme groups that don't have the nitrate bound to them, or at least the nitrate having reduced it to a different state, become useless in delivering oxygen to the tissue. The blood gets dusky and brown. I'm going to try and show some of these pictures. That is a picture of blood. It's got methemoglobin in it. The iron's reduced to a brownish color instead of being the bright red of oxygenated iron, Fe+2, or the more blue of Fe+1, or the deoxyhemoglobin actually. But it's chocolate colored brown, and the delivery of oxygen to your tissues is badly compromised. And interestingly enough, the treatment for that is methylene blue, which is compatible with injection, and even now being touted by some people as a longevity drug, which is certainly, I'm not familiar with whether that's true or not, but people are using it oral, by enema, by injection to try to prolong their life. It definitely can help rescue methemoglobinemia with the caveat that if somebody has a glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, you can throw them into a hemolytic crisis and make them even sicker than they were before. When I was in medical school, fall of 1980, we had a pharmacology unknown, and they gave us a white powder, an algorithm, books to figure out what it was, and a bunch of mice, and we figured out the LD50 in milligrams per kilogram or micrograms per gram, and looked up in the books the effects on heart rate and blood pressure and appearance and the glucose and oxygen saturation, and then went through the algorithm and decided that it was going to be sodium nitrate, and the treatment for the sodium nitrate poison mice would be vitamin C and methylene blue IV. So we figured out the dose of vitamin C and methylene blue IV and gave a mouse a lethal injection of this unknown white powder we thought was sodium nitrate, and then the rescue drug of methylene blue and vitamin C. And the mouse did quite well, didn't get nearly as sick as the other mice, recovered completely. I took him home, kept him for quite a while, and I got very familiar with trying to figure out how somebody was poisoned and how to treat it, and it worked. And that was my first case of methemoglobinemia, which is where the oxygen has had one more the iron's had one more electron ripped off of it by whatever this oxidizing agent is. Ironically, the methylene blue is also an oxidizing agent and is not directly responsible for reducing the Fe+3 to the Fe+2 state. It has to be converted by the pentose phosphate shunt in the red blood cell, which is dependent upon the pentose phosphate shunt for its source of NADPH. And if you have a G6PD deficiency, that's a rate-limiting enzyme in the pentose phosphate shunt in the red blood cell, and they can't generate enough reducing capacity of NADH or NADPH to convert the methylene blue to leukomethylene blue, which is the reduced form that actually takes the Fe+3 and converts it back to Fe+2. But we saved the mouse. I have actually seen methemoglobinemia in patients that have been in the ICU on high doses of nitrates. We use nitrates and sodium nitroprusside for blood pressure control for malignant hypertension with intracranial hemorrhages or head injuries and other cases. And we knew more than 2 or 3 days you had to stop and get them on something else or some other way to control their blood pressure. But frequently nitride was a first-line drug, and even sodium nitroglycerin, like a heart patient would take, can have that effect. But in my household, because I had that sausage making experience, we've got the prog salt, which is sodium nitrate. I'm going to try to go to front and back camera here and show you close-up dual camera. Have to pull this off. And this is the ingredient label. So I can see it. Sodium nitrite, 6.25%. And having experience with nitrates and nitrites in the ICU, I would have expected more people to have gotten in trouble with hypotension and falling out and passing out from hypotension. Other drugs that are common This was given to us by the veterinarian. It's a human Bactrim or sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim, double strength DS. And all the sulfa drugs can cause this methemoglobinemia. And that includes dapsone, which is in every reference to it, as if dapsone was a common drug. It's almost never used. It's a leprosy drug. But this is the 500 count bottle of sulfa drugs we had for use for treatment of horses, and I'd actually taken some recently for an ear infection. And this is some Walmart brand lidocaine. All the canes can do it, and children are especially sensitive to the effects of benzocaine and nitrates. You can actually get nitrates in the water and have fertilizer, just ammonium nitrate on the pasture, leak into your well water, and the kids can get nitrates from whatever source. Granddaddy's nitroglycerin or blood pressure medicine. And again, the internet is full of conflicting information, but the children are actually listed in the lab test procedures I looked up as having slightly higher activity of the cytochrome B5 reductase that actually is responsible for converting the Fe+3 back to Fe+2 than adults on the lab test side. But then on all the clinical sides, the children are more sensitive. Infants, drinking water, getting nitrates in the water. The children, especially the younger they are, the less of this enzyme they produce, less activity they have, and they can have methemoglobinemia. So be careful. Try to avoid processed and smoked foods and foods with a lot of nitrates in them because of this methemoglobinemia and the possibility of other medical illnesses that go along with it. When you char food, like a good seared steak that's overly well done, and you smoke meats, the heat and the proteins and the fats are a good way to produce aromatic hydrocarbons, some of which are carcinogenic, and this is definitely known to increase your risk of cancer, having a bunch of smoked food or a bunch of highly preserved food. And that's why I say try to get, a good fresh cut of meat, get medium rare or rare, and eat it if you can. Cook it up to temperature. If you're talking about pork or chicken, don't eat raw pork or chicken and get food poisoning. And if you're stuck on Ice Station Zebra at a Walmart distribution center after the apocalypse, and all you have to eat is Cheetos and cola, you will starve to death a lot quicker than you'll have any problems from eating Cheetos and cola and high fructose corn syrup on sawdust. So eat what you can get a hold of, but try to eat the highest quality, freshest foods you can with the least processing. Again, use common sense, and please keep a logbook on archival paper like this Write in the Rain notebooks, or that, and entering it into some off-site online data storage facility that's secure, so you can only have people you want to see in it. Let your children know, teach them about the family history. It doesn't do them any favor to let them know that you and your father both had some type of G6PD deficiency or sickle cell or leukemia and myelodysplasia. They need to know so that they can prepare. And then if you do have access and the ability, it's good to get a little genetic testing done too, so you can record all this stuff in your family history and keep this with the diet and medical history logbook. And certainly share it with your doctor, because if you come in with methemoglobinemia and the doctor wants to treat you with methylene blue and you have G6PD deficiency, you very likely could have a hemolytic crisis and get way sicker than you were to begin with. If you don't have it, which is for most of the world unlikely, or most of the world doesn't have it, it's just predominantly found in people around the Mediterranean area. The highest incidence of this G6PD deficiency really is in the Kurdish Jews, which I've never met a Kurdish Jew before. I didn't even know there were any. But 1 in 2 males has it. It's X-linked for the most part. There are over 100 mutations in the G6PD enzyme, ranging from almost just normal function down to zero function at all. And the genetics are mostly X-linked, meaning a woman could get it if her dad had it and her mom was a carrier. And some women, even when they're recessive, they've only got 1 copy of it due to lionization, where the X chromosomes are randomly contracted down into bar bodies. They can have almost a full expression of it to none, very little or none. And it's not uncommon for a heterozygous woman to have a relative G6PD deficiency if it runs in her family. So share your family history, especially with your doctor and your kids, and keep it private otherwise, however you like. But the benefit outweighs the consequences. And thank you for joining me today. Eat fresh, whole foods that you can, and supplement with vitamins if you're going to have to go on some strict weight loss diet. But don't overdo it. Bye.